Hi everyone, let's talk about part 2 of limit properties. And the questions that I have up here, it's a division multiplication now. So limit x approaches 6 negative 2 f of x divided by g of x. So I have to apply my properties first and then we go from there. So negative 2 is going to stay as it is and I'm going to write it outside where I'll distribute my limit. Limit x approaches 6 and this 6 means left and right both. F of x, and then you divide limit x approaches 6 of g of x. This is x, okay? Now let's figure it out. Negative 2 is going to stay as negative 2. Limit x approaches 6 of f of x. This is my f of x. Do you see? I check this first before I go like straight to find my limit. This is f of x. And then I'm approaching 6 positive, and this is 6 positive, and I'm approaching from the left and from the right. So the right limit that I have up here, which graph I'm using for f of x, right? For the f of x of 6. This is f of x, this is 6, and I'm going from the right side and I stop here. Remember, we are approaching y value of the x equals 6. So I'm going from the right side and I approach negative 4. I'm going from the left side towards the y value of x, and it's again negative 4. So this is going to be negative 4. Limit x approaches 6 of g of x, and again I'm going to go left and right. And this is x equals 6. What is the y value for this? It's right there, so which means I'm using this graph from the right. I'm approaching 6, and that's 6. From the left, I'm approaching 6y value for x equals 6, so this is 6. Negative times negative is positive. 2 times 4 is 8. And 6 is going to stay. You simplify this. 2 times 4 is 8 and 2 times 3 is 6. So my answer is 4/3. And always simplify your answer whatever you can. Okay, let's see. X approaches 4 from the left and right. 2 stays outside, f of x, g of x, and they are multiplying. So apply the property first. 2 stays outside. X approaches 4 of f of x, right? And times limit x approaches 4 for g of x. And you can see this 2 is multiplying with both of them. So either you can draw these brackets that you can tell them that when I multiply these two limits, and I have to multiply it with 2. So I'm going to keep that 2, and I have to find limit x approaches 4 of f of x. This is my f of x, and that's 4 positive. And this is 4, and the graph that goes with 4 is this one, right? Because up here I don't have any graph. From the left, when I start from the left, approach to the y value of 4, I'm getting negative 3. When I approach from the right, I'm getting negative 3 right there. Do you see that? Up here, that's negative 3. So this is negative 3 times, I have limit x approaches of g of x. So this is 4, and the graph that I have for 4 is this. So when I approach from the left of graph for the y towards the y value of 4, I got 4. When I approach from the right side towards the x equal 4, my y value is 4. So negative 12 times 2, which will give me negative 24, and that would be my answer. Okay, let's do limit x approaches negative 2, f of x to the power 2. So we have to find the limit x approaches negative 2, and we can write this property. If you guys remember, it was this f of x, and you keep this exponent on top of the whole thing. So what is x approaches negative 2 of f of x? This is f of x, negative 2 is right there. And I'm approaching from left and right because that's what they're talking about. So this is negative 2. The y value for negative 2 is this. I'm approaching from the right. I'm approaching from the left. The y value is negative 5. So this is negative 5 squared, which will give me positive 25. Okay, let's do that one. Limit x approaches 2 from the right of square root 2g of x. So we know the square root, we can rewrite that. You always should know the square root means half, okay? This is going to go half. So if I rewrite this, always write the square root. Always rewrite the square root questions, okay? So limit x approaches 2 from the right side and 2g of x, and the whole thing is going to go half. Instead of square root, we can write as a half. So that's what I'm rewriting it. Okay, now let's go from there. Limit x approaches 2 from the right. X approaches 2 from the right. So g of x function is right there. And this is the 2. And the question is asking from the right. So, you know, this is, if I pick this, you know, that's from the left side. So that doesn't work. So I'm going to go all the way up here. And this is a whole, which means from the right, I'm going to go arbitrarily close, which is 6. So it's going to give me 2, 6, and everything under half. 2 times 6 is 12. Again, half. Half means square root, right? So either you plug this in the calculator, if you, in case the question is saying don't use a calculator, then I'm going to do manually. 2 times 6 is 12, right? Now, what else we can have? 2 times 6 is 12, and then 6 is going to go further. You can also make 6 one more time. It's going to be 2 times 3. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 is a perfect square, so that 2 comes out, and you left with 3. So you can simplify that way, or you can change it into decimal, 3 decimal places, your choice. And depends on the question whether it's a calculator or not a calculator. If it was not a calculator question, I'll leave it as square root 12. I don't do anything because it will take some time, and your test is timed, and you can get points if you just leave it as square root 12. Okay, let's try this. F of x and g of x. I'm going to rewrite that first. So I have limit x approaches 2 from the right of f of x over limit x approaches 2 from the right of g of x. So let's find this first. X approaches 2 of f of x is right there. That's 2. And I'm talking about from the right. So if you guys pay attention from the right, if I pick this graph, that's left, right? Left side of 2. So if I pick this graph, that's right side of 2, right? So this is a whole on 2, and I'm going to go arbitrarily close from the right side, which will give me negative 2. So that is negative 2 over x approaches 2 from the right. And again, this is a left, right was that one, which is 6. Do you see we already did that once? That's a whole at 2. And if I go right side of 2, it's going to give me 6. So my answer is negative 1/3. Let's go back here. Let's rewrite as properties limit x approaches 1 of f of x minus limit x approaches 1 of g of x. And if you pay attention, I'm going, sorry, negative 1 from left and right both. So x approaches negative 1 of f of x. This is f of x, and I'm talking about negative 1, which is right here. And I'm going, this is a negative 1. On the graph, the y value is right here, negative 6. But do I have left and right? If I approach from the right, I get negative 6. I approach from the left, I get negative 6. So this is negative 6 minus, let's do g of x. Negative 1 is right here. And if you check on the top, I don't have any graph for negative 1. But the only graph we have is this. So this is negative 1 y value, which is negative 1. And I'm going to go left, and I'm going to go right. X approaches negative 1 from the left, x approaches negative 1 from the right. The y value that I'm getting is negative 1. Just solve that. It's going to be positive 1, and the answer is going to give me negative 5. in the box. Okay, so these are all the questions, guys. Again, you have questions, please make sure you comment below, and then I will help you with more examples or tutor you one-on-one on Zoom. Okay, let's see these two questions. This question is asking, g of x function is this, find the limit x approaches 0 to g of x, g negative 2 and x. If you pay attention to this whole thing, this is kind of really easy. You just have to apply the g of x function there, right? I have to set up my question first before I find my limits. So 2 is going to stay 2. What is g of x? G of x is this function. So parentheses 3x plus 2, because you can tell 2 is multiplying with g of x, plus g negative 2. What does this mean? This means a point. Like if x is equal negative 2, then what is the y value, right? So all you have to do is plug in negative 2 in the g of x and get that number. So if I plug in negative 2, I am getting, do you see for the x I plugged in negative 2? Negative 6 plus 2 will give me, negative 6 plus 2 is going to give me negative 654. Okay, then I have, in the bottom, I have just an x. So let's fix this one more time. I want to make it simpler. 6x, you distribute, right? Plus 4, positive and negative is negative 4. So you know they cancel out. In the bottom, I have x. X and x's also cancel out. So limit x approaches 0 is equal 6. Yeah. Okay, let's do that one. This one is talking about, again, the same thing, but if you pay attention, this thing is acting like an input, like an x value, and I'm going to plug this in wherever I see the x's in the question. Okay, let's do this portion first, and then I will write that. So I have limit x approaches, I'm sorry, it's not x, it's h. Limit h approaches 0. So I'm going to plug that in first. So it's going to give me 2 x, instead of x squared, I'll plug in x plus h whole squared, minus 3 for the x, I plug in x plus h plus 4. Then we have this minus, and what does this f of x means? Which means this whole function. And make sure you have a parenthesis, because you know, whenever you have minus sign, always put parentheses. Even if you have a plus, put parentheses. Okay, it's not gonna hurt. So I have 2x squared minus 3x plus 4 close, and everything is h. Now we have to simplify this, like remove the parentheses, distribute, whatever we can. Now x plus h squared, how do I solve that? X plus h squared. The easy way I do, you can rewrite this like x plus h times x plus h, right? Like this. And then FOIL. But though I have an easy way to do like x square, watch closely, x square, then this plus sign is going to stay as a plus. Then I leave the space in the middle, and at the end the square of this, which is again plus h squared. What goes in the middle? 2 times h and times x, so 2xh, something like that. And then I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 2, right? So let's do that. Limit, and remember, for the AP test, you have to give them step by step. Don't skip any step. I leave the 2 and I did this, which is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, close, and I can distribute this easily, which is going to give me minus 3x and minus 3h plus 4 stays. I can distribute this negative. You know negative is really important and you have to distribute. Negative 2x squared, negative times negative is positive 3x, negative times positive is negative 4. Now if you guys pay attention, 4 and 4 already cancel out. Okay, so and in the bottom I still have that h, don't forget that. Now I'm gonna go limit h approaches 0 again. Let's distribute that 2. So I'm gonna go 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared. Then I have minus 3x minus 3h minus 2x squared plus 3x, and 4 I already canceled them over h. I mean, I just canceled them because I didn't want that long thing, but you can do it later whenever you want it. Limit h approaches 0. Now if you pay attention, I am canceling this and this. Everything else is okay. Oh, 2x squared and 2x squared. Okay, I think that's it, right? So let's go back and write down whatever is left over. So I have, for example, 4xh plus 2h squared minus 3h, and I think that's it, over h. Now if you pay attention, that's a quadratic. You can rewrite it as a like in order. The highest degree goes first, like 2h squared minus 3h or plus 4xh. You can do that, but I'm not doing it. So what else I can do here? If I plug in 0 here, you know I'm gonna get undefined, which is in the bottom, 0 over 0. So it's better to do our more work. So more work is quadratic. It's a quadratic, so I can do factor. If I can't do factor, then I can do common factor at least. So in this case, my common factor, I always try, before I do quadratic factor or any other factors, cubic root, anything, not cubic root, any cubic function, any quadratic function, before I do anything, I try common factor first. So my common factor is h in this case. So I have 4x plus 2h minus 3, and I have h in the bottom. Do you see this h and h cancel out? Now I don't have undefined function. So now plug in h equals 0. So I'm left with 4x. This one is going to turn 0, right, when I plug in 0 minus 3. So it's going to give me 4x minus 3. And I don't have anything else to do with it. So that's the simplified form. So closely pay attention to it, and then I'll give you some homework questions too, but I will make a video of those homework questions next day. Okay, so this is what it is, and if you guys have any questions, like I said, make sure that you ask me. Comment below. Please like the videos, like the lessons, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye.